Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Uh, we have been doing calculus, right? Differential calculus.
Yes, sir.
So last class we did how to differentiate, basically methods of differentiation. What is the meaning of a derivative, and some rules also we did, product rule, quotient rule, and all for
Yes,
differentiation.
sir.
So what we will do is discuss any problems that you have in these things. So have you seen the book, Thomas and Finney book,
Yes, sir.
chapters on differentiation 1 and 2, basically?
Yes, sir. So limits. There were some things we hadn't covered, but it was there in the book. So,
So tell me if there are any doubts, any problems. Tell me what are the issues, if there is anything.
could you explain the in limits the delta epsilon thing?
Epsilon delta notation. That notation right now you don't know, right?
Yes, I read it, but I didn't fully understand.
Okay, so basically this is just a mathematically rigorous way to understand what we intuitively understand as limits. So rigorous definition of limits. So basically what we had understood was that if a function is approaching a certain value from one side, and from this side also it is approaching the same value, right?
Yes,
As
sir.
x becomes close to a from above as well as from below, if the function value is approaching a certain value, like this value, right?
Yes.
From both sides, if the tendency of approach is the same, then the limit exists, and we say L is the limit of the function as x tends to a, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is the basic idea that we have, that function tends to approach some value either from less than a or above a. Both sides, if it approaches the same value, then we call that limit exists, and that value is the limit of the function as x tends to a. However, that is not a very precise mathematical definition. So the precise mathematical definition is written in terms of this epsilon and delta. So what he says is that if for every epsilon such that x minus a, no, not like this. If for every epsilon such that fx minus L is less than epsilon, you can always find a delta such that mod of x minus a is less than delta implies fx minus L is less than epsilon, then fx tends to L as x tends to a. So the meaning of this is that, first of all, you have to understand what this mod means. How do you handle this meaning of this mod? So let's look at what it means when you say x minus a is less than this, right? Like, what do you understand by this?
So that epsilon is greater than like the absolute value of x minus a.
Okay, but if you want to simplify it, it will be easier if you don't have a mod, right? So
Yes,
you
sir.
can take two cases. Mod x,
Mi-
whenever you have, you can say it is x if x is greater than 0, and it is equal to minus x if x is less than 0, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is the definition of the mod. So now I am going to remove this mod of x minus a in that same fashion. So mod of x minus a is going to be x minus a if x minus a is greater than equal to 0, and it is going to be minus of x minus a if x minus a is less than
Lesser
0.
than zero.
So this means that basically mod of x minus a becomes x minus a if x is greater than equal to a, and it becomes a minus x if x is less than a, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this inequality now we'll understand in both of these cases. So this can be written as x minus a is less than this if x is greater than or equal to a, and a minus x is less than this if x is less than a, right? So you have x is less than a plus delta and a minus delta is less than x, right? From this one.
So is that delta or epsilon?
Whatever, name doesn't matter, dude. How does it matter? I call
So
it
because they're
delta.
two different ones, right?
They are two different ones, but I don't care about what the Greek name for this is. No,
Okay, yes, sir.
I will call B A, you will call it B. What does it matter? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Don't get worried about the minor unimportant details. Focus on the idea. The idea is that this is less than this and this is less than this. So basically your inequality becomes, this is the inequality, right?
Yes, sir.
Basically x minus a is less than delta slash epsilon means a minus delta less than x less than a plus delta, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you think about this on a number line, what it means is, let's say this is a and we have mod of x minus a is less than delta. That means x should be in a region such that x minus a is less than delta. So x is less than basically a plus delta. X is somewhere here, it could be somewhere here also, but it
Yes.
cannot be beyond a plus delta, right?
Yes, sir.
This is the upper limit here, and similarly a minus delta is the lower limit here, right?
Yes, sir.
X can be anywhere in this region. In this region, whenever x lies, you will have x minus a mod will be smaller than delta, right? Correct. If
Yes, sir.
x goes beyond this region, then it will not fit this.
Yes, sir.
So that is the meaning, that when someone says mod of x minus a is less than delta, they mean x is in a delta neighborhood of a. Neighborhood of a. So near a, you can go plus delta and minus delta, and x has to lie in that neighborhood, right?
Yes, sir.
So, okay. So now at least we know the meaning of this notation. So similarly, if someone says mod of fx minus L is less than epsilon, right? Then we can say that fx is in a epsilon neighborhood of L, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
So basically fx can be what? Fx can be, L will be somewhere here. It could be L plus epsilon or it could be L minus epsilon, but nothing beyond that, right?
Yes, sir.
Fx must lie in that.
Yes, sir. And it can't lie on like exactly that value either.
Otherwise you'd have to write less than equal to.
Equal to, yes.
So the meaning of the notation is this. So once the meaning of these symbols and all are clear, then after that it is not so difficult to understand what he means by this limit. What he's saying is, if you can find, pay attention to the language, two numbers, epsilon and delta, such that every time x minus a is less than delta implies that mod of fx minus L is less than epsilon, then fx tends to L as x tends to a. Then you say that the limit exists. So now think about what it means. You are supposed to find two numbers such that whenever, what is the meaning of this? Whenever x is in a
A
x
neighborhood.
e neighborhood, x is in a e neighborhood of a, it automatically means that fx is in a delta neighborhood or a whatever neighborhood of L,
Of L.
right? fx is in a this neighborhood of L. That means that you are getting like whatever values you want to get close to L, right? Like suppose your question was this, y is equal to x square minus 4 by x minus 2, okay? And limit of x tends to 2, right? fx. Now everyone knows that you should cancel x minus 2 and get answer will be 4, right?
Yes, sir.
Cancel x minus 2, it will become x plus 2, and you put limit x tends to 2, it should be 4, right?
Yes, sir.
But suppose somebody doesn't believe you. Suppose somebody says, no, it's not 4, it's actually 3.95. Okay. The limit is tending to 3.95, not 4, right? So how do you prove to him that 3.95 is not correct and 4 is more correct, right? Or something else, some other limit that he thinks is not correct, but 4 is the real limit, right?
Yes, sir.
That is the question. So you have to prove mathematically that fx will tend to become 4. So to prove that, you actually have to prove that I can, like, no matter what small number you say, I can make my fx closer to 4 than whatever small number you suggest, right?
Yes, sir.
Like suppose someone says, no, the actual limit is not 4, it is 3.999, okay? Actual limit is 3.999, someone is saying, and he's saying if 4.000 is not the real limit. So then basically what you have to prove to him, to disprove him, what do you have to do? You have to prove
4
that
is the closer one.
fx is sometimes for certain values of x, fx is 3.999 and beyond 5, right? Here, right?
Yes, sir.
Is greater than this but lesser than 4, right? Then it is closer to 4 rather than closer to this, right?
Yes, sir.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I got it.
So to prove him wrong, or to prove that 4 is the real limit, you just have to show that you can find an x range you can find such that fx range is nearer to 4 rather than to 3.999, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is what this statement is saying, that no matter what challenge someone gives you, this is like a challenge, this number, right? Can you make your limit closer to the L value by some 0.1%, right? Is it so close also? Can you prove that it is going to be so close? And this is your response, that yes, I can find a neighborhood of A such that fx will be in that E neighborhood, right?
Yes, sir.
So if someone says that make fx close to 4 by greater than this accuracy, like, then that means basically that mod of fx minus 4 should be, mod of fx minus 4 should be less than 0.0005, right? Correct.
Yes, sir.
Then only you are closer to it than this number, right? So once you have this, you can immediately solve for it and you will get an x range. Now see how fx was this, right? Correct.
Yes, sir.
Fx was this, so immediately cancel stuff and say that x plus 2, so x minus 2 is less than 0.0005, right? Right.
Yes, sir.
Immediately now I'm getting a range on x, right? So this is basically going to be x has to lie between 2.0005 and 1.9995, right? If x is between this range, your fx will obviously be between this range.
Yes, sir.
So in this case, because actually the limit here exists, you are able to prove that no matter what challenge someone presents to you saying that no, actually function is not tending to the value that you say, but it is something else, you can always find a x neighborhood in which the function is closer to the L rather than closer to the proposed limit that he is saying, right?
Yes, sir. Understood.
So That is what he's explaining in that book. You should read there is a page where he does all of these challenge and then some description, like how you can find a range, right? So
Yes, sir.
there is one page where he does, if this was less than this, then what is epsilon, what is delta, right? So you should go through that once more. That is the meaning of this epsilon delta notation. It is just a nice mathematical way of saying that limit x tends to a, fx is equal to L. And basically, it depends on the fact that x minus a is less than this, should imply that fx minus L is less than this. If this happens for any numbers, you can always find these two numbers. Okay. You can
Yes, sir.
always find these two numbers such that this is true, then limit exists. Okay, what else? Tell me what other things you have had any problems with.
So otherwise it was fine. Had you had explained chain rule in the previous class,
Hmm.
but so it's basically like you differentiate one part and then you differentiate the other part of the function, right?
So chain rule is basically like right now, y is a function of y is f of g of x, right? So
Yes, sir.
technically, you want the differentiation of y with respect to x. So if you are differentiating y with respect to x, then right now x is not the variable here, no? Like
Yes, sir.
f, what the input to f is not x, input to f is actually
G
g
of
of x. So that is basically one step further down the line, no, the x thing. So
yes, sir. So
so first differentiate the f dash g of x and then differentiate the g
and
dash
leave
x.
the inside part as it is, I think.
Yeah,
And then multiply with the differentiation of the inside part. Yes.
yeah. So that is the way to differentiate it. If someone had, if someone was asking, for example, y is equal to sine of x square plus 1 or something, and you want to find dy by dx. So again, the issue here is that this is not just x, this is itself a function of x. So, and this is also a function sine. So first I will differentiate the outer function and sine will become a cos, and I will not touch the inner stuff. And then I will say the inside part I will have to differentiate with respect to x, so it will become 2x. So that will be the answer. So that is the idea of chain rule. Obviously, the rigorous proof of this can also be done. However, we will not be doing it right now. The rigorous proof
Yes,
will
sir.
involve proving that limit h tends to 0, f of g of x plus h minus f of g of x by h is same as this thing, right? Correct.
Yes, sir.
So we will not be focused on that so much right now, but it can be done. I just want you to be able to use that thing properly. Right now, it's important to know how to differentiate. So this is chain rule, and other rules we have already discussed: product rule, quotient rule, and stuff.
Yes.
So go through the derivative section and tell me if there are any derivatives related problems like differentiation or anything in that.
So I have to solve more problems, like
Uh-huh.
meaning like after for the derivatives, I have to do enough like questions which I haven't done yet.
Okay. And theoretically, is there any problem in chapter 1 and 2? This is chapter 2, right? Derivatives.
Chapter 2 is derivatives. Yes.
Is there any theoretical issue in that? Anything you have not understood or anything?
So it's mostly fine only. Just quotient rule, could you explain once?
Quotient rule is y is equal to fx by gx. And we did this by product rule actually. We said y is equal to fx multiplied by 1 by
1 by
gx.
g of x.
And before we did product rule, we thought of what is the derivative of 1 by gx. This is again chain rule. So let's say you have 1 by gx. If I want to differentiate 1 by gx, so h dash x. Now, technically, this is not a function like 1 by x. No, 1 by x derivative I know is minus 1 by x square. But here it is not x, here it's gx, right?
Yes, sir.
So it is like a two-part thing. No, it is g of 1 by x or something, right?
Yes, sir.
It is first you do a gx, then you do 1 by x. Actually, it is you can call it t of q of x, where t of x is 1 by x and q of x is
G of
gx,
X.
right? So it is like a chain rule situation. So first I will do the overall function, which is minus 1 by, and keep the gx as it is, gx whole square, and then I'll differentiate the inside part, which is g dash x, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is the derivative of this part only, which is important because in product rule I need to differentiate one function and keep the other one as it is and then add the opposite thing. So now I will differentiate it by product rule. So it is y dash will be differentiate first function f dash x, keep the other function as it is 1 by gx, plus keep the first function as it is, differentiate the second function. So it becomes minus 1 by gx whole square multiplied by g dash x, right?
Yes, sir.
So once I have written this, now I just take common denominator. It becomes f dash x into g of x minus fx into g dash x by g of x whole square, right?
Yes, sir.
That is the quotient rule. That is the rule for quotient rule that people remember, this rule. But the derivation of that is not very hard on anything. It's just product rule only you are doing and
And
chain
that
rule.
chain rule, yes.
Chain rule for this part and product rule together will give you the quotient rule formula. First, differentiate the numerator, multiply with denominator, minus differentiate denominator, multiply with numerator, and by denominator squared. Okay.
Yes, sir.
What else?
Sir, it's fine otherwise, like I've understood.
Okay. Okay. So chapter 3, what is the name of the chapter? It is applications of derivatives. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So applications of derivatives basically we'll be talking about maxima and minima there. So I'll quickly do this. Maxima, minima, and critical points. Critical points, monotonic functions, and so on. Functions. So I'll explain all the theory here. It is not a very difficult chapter. It is very important, but not at all very difficult. Like once you know derivatives, it is fairly straightforward here.
Yes, sir.
So what we will do here is first try to understand what is an increasing or decreasing function. What is an increasing slash decreasing function? So as the name suggests, obviously increasing function is increasing as x increases, right? So
Yes.
if you go this side, if as x increases, fx increases, then the function is increasing. And if as x increases, fx decreases, then the function is decreasing, right? So
Yes, sir.
the meaning of increasing and decreasing can be written like this. If x1 is greater than x2 implies that f of x1 is greater than f of x2, right? Then it is a strictly increasing function. Strictly increasing function. So why are we calling it strictly increasing function? Because here what
Can
is
only be
happening is
increasing.
that only increasing, not equal to. So you could
Yes,
have a situation where x1 is greater than equal to x2 implies f of x1 is greater than equal to f of x2. That will be called just increasing. It will not be called strictly increasing because it can also be equal to. It can also be called non-decreasing.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, opposite definition will work for decreasing functions. So if x1 is greater than x2 implies f of x1 is less than f of x2. This is a strictly decreasing function. correct?
Yes, sir.
As you get a higher value of x, the output is becoming smaller. If there is an equal to sign, it will be just simply decreasing, not strictly, right?
Yes, sir.
Or you will call that non-increasing, correct? So increasing and decreasing functions are fairly straightforward to understand. One other way to figure out whether it is increasing or decreasing is obviously by the look of the graph. You can say if slope is positive, right,
Yes, sir.
it should be increasing, and if slope is negative,
Decreasing.
it should be decreasing. So if a function is increasing in an interval, its slope must be positive. So that means f dash x in that region must be positive, right? Correct.
Yes, sir.
F dash x basically gives slope of the tangent to the curve, no?
Yes, sir.
So if you find the f dash x in some region and find that the f dash x is always positive, right? Then that means that the function cannot decrease in that region.
Yes, sir.
It has to keep increasing. So if it is a function like that, which has to forcibly increase or decrease, then the maxima and minima values in that region will be the first endpoint and the last endpoint, right?
Yes, sir.
If the function is clearly strictly increasing or decreasing, the maxima minima points will be simply the beginning of the interval and the end of the interval, right?
Yes, sir. It's maximum and minimum values basically.
Like
Yes.
obviously the maximum and minimum values of the function here in this increasing situation, minimum will be this, maximum will be this, right? If you are
Yes.
looking from A to B something. Because it is strictly increasing, that's why. If it was like this, it is not necessary, no, then. Clearly minimum and maximum are different, no?
Yes, sir.
This is not a strictly increasing function. Here, the function is increasing and then decreasing, and then increasing again and then decreasing.
So what type of function is this?
Not, and there's no name for it. It's a regular function.
Yes, sir.
So now, once you understand increasing and decreasing, it is very straightforward to think about how to find maxima or minima of any function. So what we have is we have to understand these things, like this is called a point of local maxima, and this is called a point of local minima. When we talk about maxima and minima, if we are not saying anything else, then we mean local maxima and local minima. By local, what we mean is that in that region, this is the maximum. In that region, this is the minimum. You
Yes, sir.
understand?
In the
So
region of that function, right?
in that close by neighborhood, like in this portion, what is the local maximum? This.
Yes.
In this region, what is the local minima?
The
It is this.
volume.
So local in the sense that in that neighborhood, like
Yes.
this doesn't mean that the function's maxima value or is always going to be this, because later, much later, it could be higher, right?
Yes.
So right now what we are focused about is not about the function's overall maxima or minima value possible. That is called the absolute maxima or absolute minima. But that is not what we are interested in the beginning,
Yes, sir.
right? So what we are really interested in right now is, can we find these local peaks and local troughs, right? So is there any local maxima or a local minima which is apart from the overall thing, right? So that is fairly straightforward to understand now. The steps involved to finding out local maxima minima is check your derivative of the function and set it equal to 0. If the derivative is equal to 0, has some real roots, right? If it has some roots. What do we mean by roots? By roots, we mean if you
Real
take the
value.
derivative and solve it for what values of x will make it 0, right?
Yes.
So those roots then the roots will be the points of maxima or minima, will be points of maxima and minima. Okay. Now, okay. But
So
now,
which maxima and which minima? The local one.
yeah, obviously. They will be the points of local. We are not talking about absolute right now. Nowhere
Okay,
are we
yes.
going to refer to absolute. So it's all local maxima, local minima only. Why are we saying that f dash x is equal to 0? Because obviously notice that slope was positive here and then negative, right?
Yes, sir.
So from positive to negative, if the slope is changing, then it has to encounter 0, right?
Yes, sir.
So it will encounter 0 slope. That point is the point where the function in that neighborhood C, everything is below it, right?
Yes, sir.
In this neighborhood, as everything is below it, so this is a point of local maxima. In this neighborhood, everything is above, right?
Local minima.
So this is local minima. So that is the basic idea of maxima minima. However, how do we find whether at a certain point it is a maxima or a minima? Because sometimes, how do we find basically whether this one will be maxima or this one will be minima? Because sometimes the graph is not easy to draw. Like the function could be a complicated function where trying to draw the graph will not help much, right?
Yes, sir.
So if it is a situation like that, how will you still be able to find maximum minimum? So the method for that is check the values of f dash x before and after. Check the value before and after the point x is equal to a or something, right? After the point where f dash x is 0. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you check the values of the derivative before and after that, so think of it before this point. Before this point comes, the derivatives here were always positive, right?
Yes, sir.
And then these derivatives have become negative, right?
Yes, sir.
So if your function is going from increasing to decreasing, then obviously you will hit a maxima, right? You cannot hit a minima in that.
Yes, sir.
If the function was going from first it was increasing and then it started decreasing, it has to be maxima.
Maxima, yes.
And how do you know increasing or decreasing? The basically the sign of the f dash x, right? If f dash x is positive in that region, it will be increasing, otherwise it is decreasing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then if you have to identify a minima, your function should be first decreasing and then increasing, right? Then only it will
Yes,
be
sir.
a proper minima.
Yes, sir.
There is another way to do this also. Sometimes that is faster. So I'll just let you know. This is itself enough, by the way. Like first you have to identify the points where you can get maximum minima. Those points are called critical points. So critical points where maxima and minima could be attained, where maxima minima could be attained. Now what are these critical points? Critical points are points where f dash x is equal to 0 or undefined, or fx is not defined. So these are the three types of points where fx is basically where we can call them as critical points. So There could be points where f dash x is 0. There could be points where f dash x itself is undefined. There could be points where fx is not defined. So these are called critical points. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
So could you give an example for this?
So critical points are points where you could find maxima and minima. The examples could be simply like if you take y is equal to mod x is equal to 0 is a critical point. Why? Because f dash x is not defined, no? It
Yes,
is
sir.
not defined at 0. We have already discussed why it is not defined at 0, because there is a sharp curve, right? Slope of the tangent from one side is different from slope of the tangent from the other side. Why is this not defined? F dash x is not defined as 0. Do you know for this curve?
No, sir, I'm not sure.
So differentiability, that means you're not sure on. Differentiability has been discussed in chapter 1 and 2, no? When
So
is
it's not there
something
in one.
continuity and differentiability will be either at the
continuity
end
was
of
there.
one or in the second chapter.
So continuity was there.
Differentiability will also be there in the second chapter when he's doing derivatives, when he's discussing derivatives.
Yes, I'll read it again.
We have already discussed it that if it is like a sharp turn, it will not be differentiable because slope here is -1, slope here is +1.
I don't remember doing this.
Okay, you should read it again.
So I don't think we've covered this in class basically.
Differentiability we have not covered.
No, sir.
Okay. Continuity we have covered.
No, sir, but continuity was there in that book.
Okay.
And like I read it from there.
Continuity basically means that the value of the function is equal to the limit at that point, limit of the function. So if you are checking continuity at a particular point, what you mean to say is that what is the value of the function at that point? Let it be say f of a, and you have to check whether limit of x tends to a f of x is equal to f of a or not. That's all that you have to check for that. So is the limit approaching the function value? If it is continuous, otherwise it is not. So forget about continuity and differentiability. Then if we have not yet discussed, then don't worry about it so much. We don't need that here. What you just need to know is that f dash x could at some places not exist, right? Obviously function is
Yes,
not
sir.
differentiable everywhere. It could be the case that f dash x itself does not exist, or actually for now you can ignore these two parts. Just ignore these two parts, focus on this critical point. This is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
When is f dash x 0? It will be 0 at certain moments. Those moments are the places where you have to check whether it is a maxima or a minima. And how do you
Yes, sir.
check whether it is a maximum minima? Check the points just before that
And just
expression
after.
or something, and just after. See whether the derivative is increasing or decreasing just before and just after. That will tell you whether is increasing before or decreasing after. If that is the case, it is a maxima point, right? And if it is decreasing before and increasing after, right? So that
Yes.
is a minima point. Correct.
Yes, sir.
So that is a critical point. However, we can also check whether it is a maxima minima point by another method, which is called the second derivative test. Second derivative test. So this says that first find out where f dash x is 0. Basically find the critical points. Now, secondly, at all of those points, at all of those critical points, at all of those critical points, what do we have to do? We check the value of f double dash of x. Okay, what is f double dash of x? It is another
You
derivative
differentiate
of,
f of x and then differentiate that.
again, the second derivative of f of x, right? So
Yes.
second derivative of f of x, we are going to first calculate in terms of x and then put the value at the values where you are getting first derivative was 0, right? If first derivative was 0 at say x is equal to 1, right? Then you
Yes.
take another derivative and then put x is equal to 1 there and see what comes. It could come
Yes.
positive or negative or whatever, right? If it comes positive, the function is basically fine. And what you have to do is function is basically upward facing. So for example, this is the graph. Let's say you have y is equal to x squared, right? Now I want to find maxima minima of this. So my first step is finding f dash x is equal to 0. F dash x is equal to 2x, right? And this
Yes.
equation 2x is equal to 0 means x is equal to 0 is the point,
Yes, sir.
right? X is equal to 0 is the point. Now, basically this point is 0 comma 0 only, na? 0 comma
Yes.
0. Now, to find derivative or to find maxima minima, whether maxima happens or minima happens, what you can do here is just before 0, so minus h comma 0, check the value of the derivative, right? And just after 0, check the value of the derivative, right?
Yes, sir.
So if the value just before 0 of the derivative was coming positive, that means function was rising, right? And if just after derivative is coming negative, that means function is falling.
Yes.
So that will give you a sense of when to leave and all. So here, for example, let's take an example, some function like this. So if my function is fx and I want to first find out my critical points, I do f dash x is equal to 0. Let's say that becomes 0 at 1 point here, 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 right? So it is a1, a2, a3, a4, a5. Okay, a1, a2, 3, a5, right?
Yes.
The function is becoming 0 at all of these 5 points. So now my job is to find the points where it is maxima, points where it is minima, right? Which ones are maxima, which ones are minima.
Yes.
Right now I've drawn the graph, but sometimes the function could have a complicated expression where you are unable to find out the graph of it, right?
Yes, sir.
So then how would you do it, right? You might be able to find a1, a2, a3, a4, a5, but you are unable to draw the graph very accurately. So the way to do it then is simply take double derivative of the function and put x, basically find out f double dash a1, f double dash a2, f double dash a3, and so on. If it is positive, it is going to be minima. If it is negative, it is going to be maxima. Why? If it is positive, it will be minima. If it is negative, it will be maxima. This is because the double derivative of a function f double dash x decides the shape of the curve, decides the shape. How does it decide the shape? Because it influences what is called concavity or convexity of the curve. So right now notice that this curve is like this, the cave is upward, so this is concave up, this is called
Yes, sir.
concave up, and this is concave down, okay, here in this portion. concave down, because the cave is downwards. This is concave up. This is concave down. This is concave up. Okay. So
Yes.
if it is double derivative is positive, it is concave up. If it is negative, it is concave down. Okay. That's all that you need to know. Double derivative is positive in this region, concave up. Negative in this region, concave down. Okay. So once you have the shape of the curve, see, without knowing the graph of the curve also, just from the equation of the curve, you could possibly find out the signs of f double derivative here, right? Just by the algebraic calculation and differentiation, you will be able to find the signs of those. So
Yes.
now the idea is to just draw a rough plot of the whole thing so that you get a sense of whether it is actually going to be maximum or minimum or not. So if you put in the value here, and if it is coming plus, then that means it should be concave up like this. And clearly this type of graph will only give a minima, no?
Yes.
If it is concave down, it can only give a maximum, right? And so on. So it's commonsensical if you know that the double derivative gives the shape of the curve, or basically the slope of the derivative it is, right?
Yes.
It is the slope of the derivative. It is better to, however, think of it as shape of the curve, concave up or concave down. Double derivative positive means concave up, double derivative negative means concave down. Okay.
Yes.
So
So when is it convex?
concave down is called convex. I just don't use convex because it is slightly more confusing.
Okay. Yes.
Up and down, you can call one side is called concave, the other side from that perspective only will be called convex, right?
Yes.
But I don't use it because up and down, concave up, concave down is easier to remember from the perspective of double derivative.
Yes.
If double derivative is positive, it is concave up, and concave down is double derivative negative. So if it is like that, then you can easily say whether one particular point is a maxima point or a minima point or so on, right?
Yes.
So now this second derivative test is also available to you. So basically, what are the things that you know now to find maximum minima of curves? So you know, for example, one, you have to do f dash x is equal to 0 and find such points x, find x, right? Then at those points, at those x's, right? You can do either double derivative. If double derivative is greater than 0, it will be concave up, so it will be a minimum. If double derivative is less than 0, it will be concave down, or it will be a maximum. And at those x's, you could also, without doing double derivative, also know the answer if you knew that f dash x was greater than 0 before xi and less than 0 after xi, right? Correct. So that means function was rising before and falling later, right? So that will mean it is a maxima point, local maxima, right?
Yes.
And similarly, you can logically figure out what is the condition for local minimum, right?
Yes.
So these are the ways in which you find derivatives and all, or find maxima minima of functions. Now we can take some examples here. So for example, find the maxima minima of sin x plus cos x in 0 to pi. In this range, you have to find maximum minimum of sin x plus cos x. What are you doing? You're doing derivatives,
So you have to make f of x 0, right?
not f of x, f dash x. No,
F dash is,
f of x is the function only.
okay. Yes, so f dash x.
Function you don't have to make 0. That is solving the root equation. Derivative you have to take. What is the derivative? Cos x. And
Yes,
this is minus sin x.
minus sin x.
This has to become 0. So that means cos x must be equal to sin x, right?
Yes, sir.
This happens at one angle, say pi by 4.
45.
This doesn't happen at 3 pi by 4 because one of them is positive, one of them is negative, right?
Yes, sir.
In this interval, it only happens at this point, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it a maxima or minima? I will do it by two methods. I will first do a derivative once. If I do a derivative, this becomes minus sin x and this becomes minus cos x, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you put pi by 4 at this point, at the derivative point, it is minus 1 by root 2 and minus 1 by root 2, right?
Yes, sir.
So clearly the double derivative is negative, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that means that it is a maxima point. Negative double derivative means maximum, right?
Yes, sir.
Why? Because negative double derivative will mean concave down. So it will be like this, right? Concave down basically means double derivative less than 0, right?
Yes, sir. Negative.
And if it was positive, then it would have been concave up. That would have been like this, and that will be a minima point. You could also do it in a slightly different way. We right now figured out from the second derivative test that this point is a maxima, right? But you could, without taking second derivative, you could still say that that is true. I would just take a slightly different approach. My first derivative is cos x minus sin x, right? So I will notice that before 45 degree, just before 45 degree, any angle if you take, cos x minus sin x will be positive if you check. Check cos 30 minus sin 30 is what? Positive.
Yes, sir.
But after 45 degree, cos x minus sin x suddenly becomes negative. Cos 60 minus sin 60.
Yes, sir.
So the basic derivative, the single derivative is positive before cos x, before pi by 4 and negative after that, right? So it was increasing and then decreasing, right? The function was increasing and then decreasing because
Yes, sir.
the derivative is positive and then negative, right?
Yes, I understood.
So therefore, without even doing second derivative, you can still say that it is a maxima point, right?
Okay, yes, sir.
Correct? No.
Yes, sir. By saying before and after, right?
Before and after, check the sign of your first derivative. Or you can just simply do second derivative and check the sign there. If it is positive, it is concave up, so it will be minima. If it is negative, it is concave down, so it will be maxima. Right?
Yes, sir.
So this is very important, maxima, minima, because many questions will come in physics where you will have situations where you have to maximize some value or something, right? So now chapter 3 for you is totally attemptable. Chapter 3 of Thomas and Finney, okay? So what you should do is just go through now this chapter. Although don't skip any steps in chapter 2. If there is some practice of derivatives that is needed, derivatives and limits, please do so.
Yes, sir.
Because it is important to be comfortable with derivatives, not feeling scared of calculus. Like you should practice enough and see enough that you feel like, okay, this is not very hard or anything. And everything, basic rules of derivatives and all should be in your head. Maxima minima is like another application, another important application of the derivatives that you have learned in chapter 2. Okay?
Yes.
So it is important to do chapter 2 and chapter 3 as many questions as possible. I will not start anything new. I was thinking I will start integral calculus, but then I had forgotten that I'm not done maxima minima. Okay? So I will not start anything new right now. You should do more questions and I want you to bring me problems that you're facing in 2 and 3. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And we'll do some extra classes because we have missed a couple of classes. So what we'll do is tomorrow we'll do maths and then chemistry on Sunday, and then Monday.
So we missed chemistry classes. Maths and physics, I think, are like on
But we'll
track.
anyway do extra classes because chemistry is fine. We'll catch up on chemistry, but maths and physics is more that is required. That is a lot more stuff.
Yes, sir.
So Monday will be a physics class. Monday evening.
Monday. Okay, yes, sir. So tomorrow is maths.
Tomorrow is maths, Sunday is chemistry, Monday will be physics, and Monday class, whatever is the time when convenient, we'll do it. Like if there is Alan in the evening, we'll do it earlier.
Okay, yes, sir.
So you would let me know by Saturday, Sunday that Monday what is the schedule, and we'll schedule it slightly earlier. So Monday will be physics, and by Monday I hope to see you doing questions from 2 and 3. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Chapter 2 and 3 questions. Just try as much as you can so that like we can go ahead. I want
Yes,
to
sir.
go to chapter 4, which is the real chapter, which is integral. So till then, let's try and do next 1 week. Let's try and do the differential part, and we'll start the integrals soon. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tomorrow is maths, so I am expecting chapter 7 and chapter 8 questions. Okay? That
Yes,
is the sum and multiple and submultiple what we discussed last class, right?
yes, sir.
Those questions we'll discuss whatever problems, and if not too many problems, then we'll go ahead. There are a lot of exercises, no? 6 exercises or something.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't expect you to finish everything, but try all types of questions so that you know what to ask and all. What is it that you're struggling with or anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow then.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye.